The guy in the leased G-Wagon and the guy in the 10-year-old Camry both pulled into the same grocery store parking lot last week. One of them has a net worth of $11,000. The other has a net worth of $2.3 million. Guess which one is which, and I promise you'll get it backwards, because almost everyone does. Stick with me here, because this isn't really a video about cars or watches or handbags. It's about a switch that got flipped in your brain before you were even old enough to have a bank account. A switch that quietly decides whether your money ends up building something or evaporating into thin air the second it touches your hands. Once you see this switch, you can't unsee it. And you'll start noticing it in your coworkers, your family, maybe even yourself. Here's the first thing you need to understand. Looking rich and being rich are not 2 points on the same line. They're not even related. In fact, most of the time they move in opposite directions, like two people on a seesaw. Every dollar that goes toward the appearance of wealth is a dollar that, structurally, cannot go toward the substance of it. That sounds obvious when I say it out loud, but almost nobody actually lives like they believe it. Think about the last time you saw someone pull up in a brand new car. The paint's still glossy. The dealer plate's barely off. Your brain does something automatic in that half second. It files that person under successful. It doesn't ask how they're paying for it. It doesn't ask what the loan term is, or the interest rate, or whether that payment is quietly strangling their ability to save. The image does all the talking, and the image is, by design, the cheapest part of wealth to fake. That's the trick, and once you understand it, you'll start seeing it everywhere. Appearance is a purchase. Substance is a habit. You can buy the outside of a rich life in an afternoon with a big enough credit limit. You cannot buy the inside of one. The inside is built the same boring way, month after month, for years, completely invisible to anyone watching from a parking lot. Let's get concrete, because this stuff feels a lot more real with numbers instead of vibes. Picture two coworkers, both making $70,000 a year, both 30 years old. One of them, we'll call him the appearance guy, leases a car for $600 a month, upgrades his phone every year, buys the fresh sneakers, and lives in a one-bedroom apartment slightly nicer than he can comfortably afford. The other, we'll call her the substance person, drives a paid-off Honda with 110,000 miles on it, has a phone with a cracked corner she refuses to replace, and splits a modest two-bedroom with a roommate. From the outside, if you line them up at a party, everyone in the room would assume the appearance guy is doing better. He looks like it, he dresses the part, he photographs well. But here's where it gets interesting. Run the math forward 10 years. The appearance guy has been pouring roughly $14,000 a year into things that lose value the moment he touches them. The lease payment, the phone upgrades, the going out budget that keeps pace with his image. At the end of a decade, he has almost nothing to show for it beyond memories and a slightly worn wardrobe, because none of that money ever left the spending column. The substance person, meanwhile, is putting roughly that same $14,000 gap into a Roth IRA and a taxable brokerage account every year. Assuming something close to an average long-term stock market return, that's not $14,000 sitting in a drawer. That's compounding. By year 10, she's sitting on something in the neighborhood of $200,000. By year 20, assuming she never even increases her contributions, that number is well past $600,000. Same starting salary, same city, same taxes. The only difference is what each dollar was allowed to become. This is the part most people miss, and it's the part that actually matters. Money doesn't disappear when you spend it, it transforms. Every dollar you touch has to become something. It becomes a payment on a car that's worth less every single day you own it. Or it becomes a share of a company that, over time, tends to be worth more. Or it becomes a lesson, an experience, an investment in a skill that raises your income for the rest of your life. The dollar doesn't care which path you choose. It's neutral. It just goes wherever you point it, and then it keeps going in that direction long after you've stopped thinking about it. That's the part that should genuinely unsettle you a little, because it means the small, forgettable choices, the $6 coffee, the upgraded trim package, the third streaming subscription you forgot you had, aren't small at all. They're just decisions whose consequences haven't shown up yet. Now let's talk about why the appearance trap is so easy to fall into, because I don't think people do this because they're foolish. I think they do it because the trap is engineered incredibly well. Advertising doesn't sell you a car, It sells you a version of yourself that other people respect. Social media doesn't show you someone's bank statement. It shows you their vacation photo. You are constantly being shown other people's spending and almost never shown other people's saving, because saving doesn't photograph. Nobody posts a picture of their 401k contribution hitting their account. Nobody records a video of themselves not buying the new iPhone. The entire visible world around you is a highlight reel of consumption, and your brain, which evolved to trust what it sees with its own eyes, quietly concludes that this is what normal, successful people do. So you match it. You match a lifestyle you saw in a 15-second clip, funded by a salary and a set of decisions you know absolutely nothing about. Here's a phrase worth carrying around with you. Most visible wealth is rented, and most invisible wealth is owned. The car with the temporary tags might be financed for 72 months. The designer bag might be a single splurge that ate 2 weeks of income. The lifestyle might be held together with credit card minimums, quietly rolling over every month, invisible to everyone but the person living it. Meanwhile, the actual millionaire next door, and this is one of the oldest, most well-documented ideas in personal finance writing, tends to drive a used vehicle, live in a house well below what their income could technically qualify them for, and wear a watch that tells time and nothing else. Not because they're cheap, because they understand something you're about to understand too. The goal was never to look like you've already made it. The goal is to actually get there, and getting there requires that your money be doing something other than sitting on your wrist. There's also a fifth piece to this that almost nobody talks about, and it might be the most important one. Taxes and time work differently depending on which path you choose. When you spend money on appearance, that money is gone the instant it's spent, taxed on the way in, and then simply vanished on the way out. No second act, no future benefit. When you route money into something like a 401k or a Roth IRA instead, you're not just saving, you're changing the tax treatment of that money for decades. A traditional 401k contribution can lower what you owe the IRS this year, while a Roth IRA lets that money grow completely untouched by taxes for the rest of your life. So every dollar of growth on top of your original contribution is money the government will never touch again. That's not a minor technical detail. That's thousands of dollars over a lifetime, sometimes tens of thousands, simply from choosing the right account instead of the right accessory. Nobody ever got a compliment at a barbecue for maxing out a Roth IRA. Nobody's going to notice. But 20 years from now, the person who did it quietly, without telling anyone, is going to have choices the person with the nicer barbecue outfit simply won't have. That's the trade you're actually making every time you decide between the visible option and the invisible one. And once you see it framed that way, it gets a lot easier to walk past the shiny thing in the showroom window. Let's go back to that question from the beginning, the one about the two guys in the parking lot, because now you have the tools to actually answer it correctly. The Camry driver with $2.3 million almost certainly didn't get there through some dramatic windfall. He probably got there the boring way. Buy modest, invest the difference, let time and compounding do the heavy lifting. Repeat that pattern for 20 or 30 years without much drama. The G-Wagon driver with $11,000 to his name almost certainly isn't a bad person or an unintelligent one. He just got caught in the current everyone gets caught in, where every raise gets absorbed by a slightly nicer version of the same lifestyle before it ever has a chance to become an investment. Financial writers call that lifestyle creep, and it's sneaky precisely because it never feels like a decision. It feels like a reward. You got the promotion, so of course you deserve the nicer apartment. You got the bonus, so of course you deserve the vacation. Each individual upgrade feels earned and reasonable. It's only when you zoom out 10 years that you see the pattern. Income went up, but the gap between income and spending never grew, so nothing ever accumulated. And this is the part that should really land for you, the reframe I promised at the start. The switch I mentioned earlier isn't a switch between spending and saving. That's too simple. The real switch is between borrowing status from your future self and lending status to your future self. Every time you buy something to look successful today that you can't actually afford, you are taking a loan out against the person you'll be in 10 years, and that loan comes with interest, paid in stress, in retirement age, in options you won't have when you actually need them. Every time you choose the boring, invisible option instead, the Camry, the modest apartment, the unglamorous index fund contribution, you're doing the opposite. You're lending your current comfort to your future self, and future self pays that back with interest too. Except this interest works in your favor. It compounds. It grows quietly in the background while you're living an ordinary-looking life that nobody at the grocery store parking lot is impressed by. And that's exactly the point, because you're not building this for the parking lot. You're building it for the version of you who's 55 and gets to actually choose whether to keep working, instead of being forced to. So here's the very practical version of all this, the part you can actually use starting today. Before your next big purchase, ask yourself one honest question. Am I buying this because it will make my life better in a year, or because it will make me look better in the next 5 minutes? That single sentence filters out an enormous amount of financial damage before it happens. It doesn't mean never buying anything nice. It means knowing the difference between a purchase that serves you and a purchase that performs for an audience that, statistically, is barely paying attention to you anyway. Most people are too busy managing their own image to spend much time studying yours. Track the gap between what you earn and what you spend, because that gap, not your salary, not your job title, not the car in your driveway, is the actual engine of wealth. A person earning $55,000 a year who saves 15% of it will, over a working lifetime, out-accumulate a person earning $150,000 who saves nothing, because compounding doesn't check your income, it checks your consistency. Automate that gap into a retirement account or a brokerage account the same week the paycheck lands, before your lifestyle has a chance to expand and swallow it, because lifestyle expands to meet whatever's available unless you physically remove the money from the equation first. And give yourself permission to look, from the outside, a little unremarkable for a while. That's honestly the hardest part, harder than any spreadsheet or budgeting app, because it means tolerating the quiet discomfort of being underestimated. It means your coworker with the lease and the new phone might seem, for a few years, like they're winning. Let them seem that way. You're not playing the 5-year game, you're playing the 30-year game, and in that game boring wins almost every single time, because boring is just another word for consistent, and consistent is the only thing compounding actually needs from you. So when you think back to that parking lot, the G-Wagon and the Camry sitting next to each other under the same fluorescent lights, understand that you were never looking at two different levels of success. You were looking at two completely different relationships with time. One person spent their money trying to convince strangers they'd already arrived. The other person spent their money quietly building the thing that actually gets you there. Nobody in that parking lot could tell the difference just by looking, and that's the whole lesson. Wealth was never meant to be visible in the moment you're building it. It shows up later, in the choices you suddenly have that other people don't, in the ability to change careers without panic, to retire on your own timeline, to handle an emergency without it becoming a crisis. That's the version of rich worth chasing, the one nobody can see from across a parking lot, the one that's actually yours. If this shifted how you think about money, do me a favor and hit like on this video and subscribe for more.